Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, since the advent of the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund, or PIF for short, we've seen millions of euros pumped into the English Premier Football League, and currently we see very vague financial policies in terms of being able to deal with that thing happening and the likelihood of that continuing to happen in the future. As a consequence of this inflow of capital, we need more stringent policies to be able to serve as an internal check and balance for teams they invest in, as well as a way to be able to balance out and make the league still fair and not just allow the top teams to monopolize and control the whole thing. We respect and we understand meritocratic outcomes, but the point in which only the top teams, for instance, just like when they bought and acquired huge stake in Newcastle United, is exactly where we still want to protect the interest of those clubs and teams they infused money in, to be able to protect the proximity of the players, as well as the effect and backsplash that has on the league and team in general. A couple of features of our policy which we think are important. Number one, we think that this is basically a way to be able to improve on the status quo. What is the status quo? The status quo, by virtue of how this works, is that you can spend what you earn. Essentially, you don't have a hard cap or ceiling, meaning teams who are bigger and more successful, legacy institutions, are likely the ones from the get-go who are earning more and as a consequence have the ability to be able to spend more. Because of course, what you spend on is a function of what you earn. Meaning, there is not a clear set of control in terms of the budget and funding that happens. What essentially happens, right? We think the introduction of this policy allows us to be able to determine how much they're going to be able to spend. Because like I said in my pre-oration, this happens amidst the backdrop of huge capital inflows coming from Saudi Arabia, meaning the lack of transparency and status quo added on top of lots and lots of euros coming in is exactly the point of failure that we want to deal with. What's exactly going to happen? The second part, how is the new financial regulation better? It's clearer and more stringent, and there's less ambiguity. This happens in a couple of clear ways. By 2026, what's going to happen is that 85% of income earned, meaning if you understand the simple financial statement, sales minus expenses or money in minus coming out equals net profit or how much you earn. A lion's share, or 85% of that, should specifically go to agent fees, should go to transfers, and should particularly go to being able to deal with the internal workings of the team. You might ask, what happens to the 15%? Probably saved as retained earnings. You bankroll and finance that for emergencies or something that could happen. How does this affect the team? This affects the team because this now allows a certain sense of transparency to happen, wherein the funds are targeted to be reinvested to that team, meaning on average to be able to pay your top players, your bench players, your newcoming players, and your coaches and staff on average better because what you earn particularly goes there. The harm with the comparative is that, especially with the inflow of a lot of the Saudi Arabian capital, we don't necessarily know the direction of what's going to happen. And I think it's fair to say that Saudi Arabia, a leader in OPEC, might have their own perverse incentives, meaning they might be using this as a means to be able to assert hard and soft power within the region and in the world. It might be their way to launder money, put something from one pocket to another. We just cut through a lot of that bureaucracy at the point in which we demand them to be able to be accountable. I said, chat, I'll take you in a bit. The second part of this framing is the 5x in terms of the ceiling, meaning for teams who are mid to the lower end, especially those who have a limited share of market or prize pool, and those who have limited broadcasting rights and capacity, basically your smaller and less known teams like that of Leicester City, that of Brighton, that of the Wolves, are exactly the ones we want to be able to protect, to still be able to compete and not just get absolutely fucked or wrecked by the richest teams. You have Newcastle United, of which got acquired or has heavy stake with the Saudi fund, and historically Ivy League or kind of like legacy teams like Manchester and City and Chelsea, who we ultimately also have to keep in check. Before that, POI, go for it.
So a lot of these transparency mechanisms already exist in the status quo, right? The info slide, in fact, specifically says that the transparency is inexclusive. You only have to debate about the 85% cap.
Yeah, the thing exists on both sides, meaning on both sides they have to release how they're spending, and there's, I'm sure, auditing of the financial statement. But what I'm trying to say, which the info slide also says, is that the specific difference is in terms of how this is split. Like what I literally said in my prop, meaning that's exactly the particular difference that you get, which we think has the following impacts. Number one, yeah, on both sides it's transparent, but just because it's transparent doesn't mean they're gonna spend it to that particular regard. Meaning, absent this form of funding, there's no particular guarantee that it's gonna go back to the very people who need it. Particular new players who are in the process of negotiating contracts. Players who are deeper into the bench, like your deeper team B, C, and D in terms of roster, don't have a necessarily ability to be your starting amount of players who are playing. And there's a likelihood that these Saudi people coming in are probably just going to invest it in the A team, who already are so fucking rich, who have the biggest salaries in the world, which we think need to be able to be distributed upon so that the longevity of the team is able to be intact. On average, the team is better. The second impact here is that in terms of the sport, we give a capacity for new players to be able to compete, and new clubs and franchises like the ones I mentioned. Because there's this cool fun fact about, I think it was a team like Leicester City. Basically, they were acquired by this like Russian oligarch, and then when the war broke out, like some shit happened with them, and like they didn't have funding, and it stifled their ability to be able to play. So, because Saudi Arabian investment and foreign capital is changing the way we get access to these things, we need additional mechanisms for transparency to, on average, make things for existing players, existing clubs, existing leagues better, and also as a sport in general to be better. We are very proud to stand on side affirmative.